If my eyes look red and puffy, it's because I just got up from a nap. And a couple of hours ago, I scratched myself here on my neck. And now that I'm taking blood thinners for my heart, I sometimes have a hard time stopping even the most minor of scratches from bleeding. So I wasn't able to shave, but I think you guys have seen me looking a lot worse than this, so I figured you wouldn't mind today because I really wanted to come on and just do this quick video to share with you about a poll I posted just yesterday actually. And I asked viewers, have you ever reused paper napkins, paper plates, or plastic utensils? And I was really expecting the worst. I thought I would get a lot of really negative comments about what a miser I was for doing that. And I assumed that probably no one would say yes, or maybe a really, really small minority, maybe 1% would say yes, because this is something I've been doing since I was a kid. Well, once again, I was totally wrong, which I usually am on these polls. I always kind of in my mind, I kind of have an idea, how the results will be, and I'm usually completely off. But today I think I was off more than any other video I've ever done, because 66% of you said yes, you do reuse paper napkins, paper plates, and plastic utensils. Only 34% of you said no. And kind of a record number of you, I think, left comments as well. I got over 100 comments just in the first day. So I think I really touched a nerve with this one, and a good one, a positive one. In the subtitle to the question I asked, or to the poll, I asked, if you do reuse these items, do you do it to save money, or to help the environment, or just not to be wasteful? And it turns out that you guys are like me. It's sort of a combination of all those things. And I'm definitely not alone. But again, really, really surprised and pleasantly surprised. I'm so happy that I'm not the only one who doesn't like to be wasteful. And the one comment that came up a lot over and over and over from quite a few of you is that usually that you had a grandparent or grandparents who lived through the Great Depression. And because they survived the Great Depression, it made a big impact on their lives. And for the rest of their lives, they tried not to be wasteful, and they saved everything, I guess, just in case it ever happened again. And I think that was maybe where I got it myself, because as far back as I can remember, when I was just a young child, I never liked to waste anything. And I don't know if I got it from my grandmother or my grandparents who went through the Great Depression. I don't remember if maybe they were just role models and they saved things, and maybe they reused paper plates and napkins and plastic utensils, or maybe it was just my own personality, but I've just always hated to waste things. And in my family, we sometimes joke, because I think I'm the only one who's like to the extreme, where I can use a napkin for weeks, sometimes months, and I don't share them with other people. But if I, let's say, have a sandwich or something and I use a napkin just to make sure crumbs don't get on the floor or on the table or whatever, I'm not going to then throw the napkin away because there were a couple of crumbs from the sandwich or the cookies or whatever. And so I'll just put the crumbs in the sink, and then I'll fold up the napkin, and I have a special place where I keep my used napkins. And I've always had a stash of used napkins that I use over and over and over. But if I use a napkin and it gets soiled, if you're having spaghetti and you've got it all over your face or whatever, and you wipe your mouth off, I'm not going to reuse a napkin that's covered in spaghetti sauce. Or pizza is a good example. When I was at Costco the other day, I used 10 napkins just to wipe off all the grease from on top of the pizza before I ate it, trying to get rid of as much grease. Same thing with bacon and things like that. So I'm not going to reuse napkins like that, but I don't know if you guys do this, but I often use a napkin just as a bib, just in case anything falls while I'm eating onto my, just to protect my shirt. But that almost never happens. I'm not a messy eater, so I rarely ever get anything on my napkin. And so I'm not just going to throw the napkin away, where I know a lot of people who, if they even touch a napkin and use it for anything, it immediately goes in the trash after the meal, even if nothing's ever touched the napkin. That to me is just so wasteful. And, I know the napkin itself is probably a fraction of a penny. So I'm not doing it to save money. I'm really doing it just not to be wasteful. I've just never, ever liked being wasteful with anything. And any napkin that I would use, even if nothing gets on it but crumbs, I still wouldn't share that with guests if anyone came over. So these napkins that I reuse, they're just for me to reuse, not for anyone else. And I keep them in a separate stash away from the clean napkins. So if you're ever coming over to the house, don't worry, you won't be using a used napkin. Now a paper plate, that might be a different thing, because same thing with paper plates. How often have you used paper plate? Just make sure crumbs don't get on the table or the floor, but nothing got on it except for a couple crumbs, and you wipe them off in the sink, and then you just put the paper plate back into the pile of paper plates, the stack of paper plates. Apparently, I'm not the only one who does that. I mean, I think I'm the only one in my family who does that. But so if you come over, you might be using a paper plate that was once used to capture crumbs from a previous meal. But yeah, I'm not going to share a paper plate with anybody that's got any food on it, real food or stains or anything like that. I'm not going to wash a paper plate. Although some of you did say some of the, the really heavy Chinette paper plates that are almost, well, I guess Chinette, is that more like plastic? There are some really heavy-duty paper plates, though, where you could actually wash them off. They're kind of covered with a wax coating, and I think maybe I've washed off a few things from that and dried it, and they're perfectly fine. And same thing with plastic utensils. I think I've always washed those, and I just wash them like I would any normal utensil. You can just wash those in hot soap and water, and they're just as clean as never having been used. Surprisingly, I was at Walmart this morning and noticed the napkins. Well, actually, I've noticed this recently. Napkins have gone up a lot, $3, $4, $5 for a package of napkins. That should be maybe 50 cents to $1, in my opinion. So yeah, price of napkins, I have a feeling because those are getting so expensive, people will probably start doing this, even if they weren't doing it to help the environment or not to be wasteful. They might be doing it just because napkins and paper plates and items like this are getting really, really expensive. That's just ridiculous that things like this are getting so expensive. Now, some of you also, some of my favorite comments were the ones that reminded me that I save other things that I completely forgot and I didn't mention in the poll. Lots of you wash out plastic bags, the plastic Ziploc bags that are very expensive, and they're usually pretty large. Well, yeah, gosh, I've been washing those out, and I dry them. I'll just kind of air dry them, and then I reuse them over and over and over. And again, the only time I would throw those away is if there was something really greasy or something that I couldn't wash out, and they just got ruined. Or after a while of rewashing and reusing, they might just wear out. But yeah, I've been doing that for years. I'd completely forgotten about that. And one of the funniest ones that I had forgotten was that I also sometimes, well, actually most of the time, if I ever use foil, I try to reuse it as many times as I can, depending on, what it's being used for. And if it gets covered with food and stuff, then you have to throw it away. But a lot of times you just put foil over something, even if you're cooking and food doesn't get on it. It's just perfectly fine. So afterwards, you just fold it up, and I have a separate stash for my used foil as well. Let me read some of the comments. I think you might find them pretty interesting.
Lisa Marie Hare says, yes, I hate single-use plastic. I save bags, think tortilla, bagel, bread bags. It's nice to use them to cover up something in the fridge that you don't necessarily have a lid for. Instead of plastic wrap, I use those plastic bags. Yeah, I do that too, Lisa. Tartan Texan 007 says, I've washed plastic forks and knives and even plates. No need to throw them away unless they are broken. I also keep any silverware packets that come with takeout if I don't use them. Sometimes put one in the car for emergencies if I forget to get one or need it for something else. Yeah, I do that too, Tartan. Jenny B says, I learned from my grandma to rewash plasticware, also foil and Ziploc bags. She was born in 1918, so she was a young girl during the Great Depression, and she carried that with her the rest of her life. She passed it down to us. Yeah, I think my grandparents probably passed that down to me, and I just didn't even realize it. Gail Jordan says, yes, I live alone, reuse paper plates if they are not too soiled, also plastic utensils. Hannikin says, if I have something to eat on a paper plate and there is no food leakage on the paper plate, I save it to use to give my 2 cats messy treats on. I don't buy paper plates often. I do wash and reuse plastic plates, take out food containers with lids, as well as plastic knives, forks, and spoons. It's not about saving money. It is about not being as wasteful with products bad for the environment. I will be glad when disposable plastics are gone. My grandmother washed and saved aluminum. Oh, looks like there's more to read here. Oh, okay, this is a long one. You know what? I'll just go ahead. Just go ahead and pause this if you want to read the entire message. Some of the longer messages, maybe I'll do that with. Otherwise, this will be a 2-hour video. But thank you, Hannikin. I appreciate the comment. Rio de Janeiro says, reuse, recycle, repurpose, and landfill free. I also clean takeout containers to reuse. Wash glass jars from pasta sauces. Yeah, I do that too, and jam jars. I even repurpose clothes, shoes, linens, pillows, bedding, etc. Anything to lessen waste, and all the above I've stated. Yes, I think that's awesome, Rio. Linda in Nines says, yes, all the time. I take after my grandmother. She was a smart lady, loved to recycle. I use my paper plate. It has a little coating on top. I just wipe it off with a damp paper towel and ready to use, and plastic spoon and fork. Been doing it for years. Laugh out loud. Have a great day, Steve. Yeah, thanks, Linda. Yeah, I've been doing that too. It's so funny, though, that I'm the only one in my family that does it. I wonder if all of you leaving messages, if you're the only one in your family, or maybe everyone does it. It's just, yeah, I don't know. In fact, I don't know anyone who does this other than all of you leaving messages. So I always thought that I was the only one. Like I said earlier, I thought there'd be like maybe 1% of you who said you did this too. So I found my people. Marlene Pearson says, I have rewashed my plasticware. My mom always rewashed it, along with Solo cups. She grew up during the Depression. She could stretch $1 until it begged for mercy. Poor George Washington. Thanks for the laugh, Marley. Crate Trained says, of course, and I grab extra at the Chipotle when I go to use at home. Yeah, I do that too sometimes. I don't grab extras after I've eaten, but if I happen to be eating in a fast food or any kind of restaurant, if there are napkins there, I'll just take them with me. We have this one Mexican restaurant downtown here in Palm Springs, and the napkins they give you are more like bedspreads. I mean, they're huge. They're like 10-fold, and I mean, you could stretch them out and use them as a sheet, and you get one, but I stick that in my pocket and I can use that for weeks or even months afterwards. But I do think I'm the only one of my friends who does that when we leave a restaurant. I think I'm the only one that takes my napkin with me. So Lawyer Calhoun says, I don't use paper plates or plastic utensils, but I often reuse plates, forks, knives, spoons without washing if not too dirty. Okay, and I make a full pot of coffee and drink it over several days, reheating each cup in a microwave. I also bring soda and iced tea from home to Wendy's or Burger King drive-through because their fountain drinks are overpriced. That's a good idea. I never really thought about that. I mean, that's a good way to save money, and yeah, a lot cheaper. And yeah, I wonder, that's a totally different topic, but yeah, I do like that. That's a great tip, to bring your own drinks to the restaurants, the fast food restaurants, I guess. Chris, last name 9417, says, yes, I found myself going through a lot of paper plates, so I started reusing some of them. Dora Wedlock says, always save fast food napkins. Excellent sub for paper towels for small cleanup. Saves a lot of paper towels from landfill. It sure does. I don't think I have ever bought paper plates or utensils. Save all from any fast food I buy. Yeah, especially these days with the price of fast food being so expensive, I think they should at least throw in a few extra paper plates or napkins for you to take home with you. On the other hand, maybe that's why their prices are going up so much, because so many people are taking all the napkins home with them. I don't know, maybe. DS says, absolutely, not paper plates or napkins so much. I have cheap plastic picnic plates that get washed and used again. Plastic cutlery washed, plastic Ziploc bags washed. Napkins go into the compost bin. If I did buy paper plates, I would get ones I can compost, no plastic or wax formed into them. I like to use things until they fall apart for two reasons. Save money, of course, but also for the environment. There's enough plastics killing the earth. I'm hoping my little bit helps prolong existence. Yeah, me too, DS. I like the way you think. Eric Lomax says, I and my wife do wash and reuse the plastic utensils, and they do last a while until they break, and then it is time to throw them away. As for paper plates and napkins, those should be thrown away after one use of them, as they won't last long, and also it is unsanitary to try and reuse them, as others can get sick from reuse of them. Yeah, I would never have someone else use my reused napkin, but I think if you just use them yourself and you've just wiped your mouth and there's really nothing on it, it's probably fine. At least for me, I've never gotten sick, well, that I know of. Berserkly says, I do recycle the plastic and dispose of the paper products in my green can for compost. That's excellent. M. Vincent says, I reuse paper plates to use in the microwave to prevent spills if they're mainly clean. Also, paper towels to pick up spills. Clean mirrors, again, if no residue is on them. Yeah, they can definitely be used for other things. Not necessarily, if you save a paper towel, it doesn't necessarily have to be used again, or a paper napkin to eat with, but you can use them to clean with. Virginia Caston says, no, I haven't. My grandmother used to buy the plastic plates, plastic utensils, and solo cups. She used to wash them in hot soapy water and reuse them. I understand her mindset, though, since she lived through the Great Depression when they didn't waste things but reused as much as they could. Laura Mickelson says, only the plastic utensils. Miss Blinn says, yes, but just coated plates that weren't heavily soiled. I use them once or twice more than toss. We do have plastic utensils and plastic cups on hand, but don't use them daily. My reason is to just get a little more use out of them. John Petticord says, easy on the environment. Mary Hairline says, only plastic utensils. If they only need to be washed and aren't broken or otherwise unusable, why not reuse them? Exactly. Frugality and waste are the main factors. Even plastic ware isn't inexpensive these days, especially on a limited income. Yeah, I've definitely, like I said a minute ago, I've noticed that the prices of all of these reusable items is really, really starting to skyrocket like everything else. T-Bird says, just paper plates. If there isn't any food stuck on the plastic, utensils get reused a lot too. Not napkins though. We use paper napkins and fold it over 3 times in one use, most times, so they go into the trash. Debbie Tharp says, I haven't that I can recall. I must say I have enjoyed reading the responses you received. Yeah, they are pretty interesting, and maybe after you've read all these, maybe you'll start reusing some of your barely used paper napkins and paper plates. Shalila rhymes with Delilah says, I reuse the heavy-duty paper plates in the microwave. I lay some parchment paper on the plate and reheat whatever food is on there. Then change the paper as needed. Yeah, that's definitely something we do too. Ingrid Fitz says, sometimes if my husband and I use a paper plate for a sandwich and nothing got on it but a few crumbs, we'll use it again. Not to serve others, so why not? We've washed plastic utensils before too. Yep, absolutely, Ingrid. Steve Chase says, not anymore because of microplastics, so cut down on using that stuff. Okay, so he's trying to cut down on the use of plastic, which is probably a good thing as well. Gumshoe says, I reuse paper towels all the time. Just wash them in the washing machine and use them again. They are the ones made of microfiber. I've never heard of that. I've never heard of a paper towel made with microfibers that you could wash. I'll have to look into that. That's kind of interesting. I'm thinking a paper towel in a wash machine is just going to turn into mush. But yeah, I don't know. I'll have to look into that. Maybe some of you know and can leave a comment and let us know what Gumshoe is referring to. Heather Stevens says, just always feel real bad not reusing the plastic. Yeah, me too. Allison Meyer says, yes, we have done that with all that was listed. It has been a habit of mine for many years. We do it to save money, not to be wasteful, and cannot see throwing away a clean paper plate when it was just used for something that did not leave a mess behind. I have even taken a damp cloth and wiped off a paper plate so it can be used again. Yep, me too, Allison. Hansman says, I've washed and reused plastic utensils, but have not reused paper products. Well, you might want to try that, Hansman. After reading all these comments or hearing all these comments, Sincerely, Liz Rose says, during middle school, about 1975, I went to a friend's home and her mother was sitting at the kitchen table cutting paper napkins in half. That seemed really extreme to me. Yeah, I don't know. I guess. I mean, well, it's funny because now with the paper towels, they actually come cut in half, and some of the brands even come cut in quarters. So I think it's just sometimes you don't need an entire napkin, and a half will do, or a quarter will do. So yeah, I mean, it probably as a kid I could see it maybe seeming extreme, but I don't know if you still feel that way. But yeah, I don't know, maybe all this is extreme. It doesn't seem extreme to me because I've done it all my life, but yeah, maybe to somebody who hasn't done it or been exposed to it, maybe it is extreme. Must be recyclable or reusable. Love free napkins though. Yep, me too, Debbie. Joanne Thomason says, reduce waste, plastic bags and utensils mostly. Janice Lawrence says, yes, I wash the plastic utensils and reuse them. I save the non-soiled napkins and use them. Parker says, my grandmother was a kid of the Depression. She did that to a certain extent. I don't do it for multiple reasons, one of which is that washing paper, in my opinion, is a waste of water. That's true. Also, I like a clean plate every time I eat. Yeah, it's true. I can't imagine washing paper, but if it's not been used, well, we've already talked about this. Thanks for sharing, Parker. Robert Forrest says, I don't use any of those except paper napkins, and they are usually not reusable after being used. Yeah, Robert might be a very messy eater. Greeley Man says, red Solo cups used to last 4 or 5 washings, but now start to crack after 2 uses. I'm cheap and pay attention to wastefulness, and if the dishwasher is full, I'll grab one of those, but won't just toss it later. Foil gets reused. Yeah, that's interesting about the Solo cups. I'm wondering, I'm sure all of these disposable product companies really hate people like us who reuse and rewash and reuse a lot of these items. So they probably caught on to the fact that these red Solo cups that were very thick and heavy and could easily be washed, can be used and reused, and it's probably cutting down on their sales. So they probably figured out a way to make them with cheaper plastic so you can only wash them, a couple of times before they disintegrate. So yep, they've caught on to us, unfortunately. Vince F. says, I also wash and reuse storage bags, but only the gallon size and also large plastic drinking cups. Yep, that's great, Vince. I forgot to add that to my list because I've been doing that for years too. Backyard Zoo says, plastic utensils, yes. The rest is crazy. Yeah, I mean, I guess some of us are kind of crazy to wash our paper plates, but, to each their own, right? 70 Brine says, never napkins or paper plates. I have used plastic utensils because all my dishes were dirty. I've reused plastic plates as well. GZ Girl says, absolutely, no shame here. I've seen people throw those heavy-duty paper plates in the garbage with no stains on them or food stuck to them, and it really bothered me. Yeah, me too. I hate to see people just completely wasting anything that could be reused. Todd says, I reuse everything possible. Some people make a religion of wastefulness. Being responsible and thrifty feels good to me. I agree, Todd. Me too. Dorothy Walker says, I reuse everything. Bread bags, plastic silverware, paper plates, paper towels. When you live on barely nothing, everything that can be reused is reused till it can't no more. Kaylee says, I reuse a lot of things such as plastic bags. The bagels come in. I always wipe off my paper plates, and it is plastic forks or knives. I wash them and use them over and over till I can't anymore. Too much waste when you can easily wash or rinse them off. I agree, Kaylee. Lisa Mills says, "Hi Steve, my friend Stefan came to visit from Germany years ago and he saw me throw a Ziploc bag in the garbage and yelled at me, 'You Americans are so wasteful. Wash that bag out and use it again.' To this day, I still wash the Ziploc bag and use over and over." That's awesome, Lisa. You had a good friend there. Thank you, Stefan, for making a convert out of Lisa. Cheryl B says, "Chinette paper plates are very thick and I cover them with paper towels to heat bacon. All the grease is absorbed in the paper towel, leaving the paper plate relatively clean. No point throwing it away." Absolutely. That can be used, I'm sure, many, many, many times. Diane Bauer says, "Reuse a paper plate?" Well, hopefully Diane's listening to all of the comments and will maybe rethink and understand why we would reuse a paper plate. Karen Hart says, "Something I don't see mentioned is I save, wash, and reuse high-quality chopsticks I get from a California Thai fusion restaurant. These are made from bamboo, not that cheap, splintery, pine-like wood you normally get at Chinese takeout." Yeah, that's excellent. I have actually. I was thinking about that after I first read this. I thought, oh, that's a good idea. And then I realized, I looked in my drawer and we do have some really nice Chinese chopsticks that I have saved from the past. But I don't usually, most of the Chinese restaurants we go don't really give out chopsticks. So, and I don't really use chopsticks. But yeah, I bet a lot of viewers and a lot of people who have comments, I bet they also do this with chopsticks too. That's yeah, definitely. Why would you want to throw away a perfectly good chopstick? Even the cheap ones, I would think, unless they have splinters in them.
So if you missed taking the poll, are you part of the 66% who said yes, you do reuse these items? Or are you part of the 34% who said no, never, or rarely? So share with us in the comments, and thanks as always for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.